Welcome to Stoked, the podcast that helps adventure elopement photographers hit six figures and beyond in their businesses without hustling on social media. I'm your host, Megan McPhail, a former burnt-out emergency veterinarian that quit my hard-earned career to become an elopement photographer. Now I'm living a life I absolutely love, full of travel, adventure, and financial abundance, and I am hell-bent on helping you do the same. Are you ready to start booking out your calendar with dream couples in breathtaking locations and feeling genuinely stoked about your elopement photography business, life, and bank account? Then let's dive into this week's episode. Hey, it's your host, Megan McPhail, and today I have a special guest. I have Elizabeth of Embr Films. She is a Colorado-based elopement videographer. Not only does she video couples, but also pets. She has another videography business called Ruff and Roam. And Elizabeth, I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast. Welcome.
I'm excited to be here.
Yay! So why don't you tell us, how did you become an elopement videographer? That's got to be an interesting story.
Yeah, so I actually started out as a photographer back in high school doing senior photos, family photos, basically whatever I could get my hands on and get people to pay me $50 for. And I really knew by my junior year that I wanted to be a photographer or a creative of some capacity. So by the time senior year rolled around, I was just totally just messing around. Like half my classes were art and music classes. And then the others were the required classes I had to take. But I didn't bother taking the ACT test, didn't bother applying to colleges. I was just like, I'm going to go into this head first, no hesitation. And that's exactly what I did after I graduated. Started shooting traditional weddings, got a lot of second shooting jobs, assisted a huge studio here in Denver. And then in 2015 was when I switched over to video. I started realizing there weren't a lot of people doing video and doing it well. And I had some experience in video. And I thought that that would just be a great transition for me. And it was the best thing that I could have done. It combined everything that I loved about music since I've been a musician my entire life, writing poetry and just loving writing in general, as well as the visual elements of video. So I got to combine every single thing into one medium. And I have no regrets doing that. And then it was in 2020 when COVID shut the entire world and wedding industry down that all my couples that had traditional weddings planned, they had to pivot and switch to elopements. And at that point, elopement photography was really taking off and adventure elopements are really becoming a thing. And I really wanted to do that for video, but I didn't feel like it was possible because it was already still a newer thing for people to be booking video consistently for traditional weddings, let alone elopements where people think, oh, like I don't need a videographer. It's just an intimate wedding. Like it's not that important. Well, it is important. So 2020 and all my couples pivoting is what gave me the push to really dive deep into elopements. And then by 2022 is when I rebranded from Elizabeth May Films to Embr Films that better encapsulates what we're doing with elopements, what we're doing with the relationships and the connections that we have with one another. So at this point now do about 95% elopements and maybe 1 to 2 traditional weddings each year. I still like the party and I still think they're fun, but most of my work is now elopements as a videographer.
That's so freaking cool. What is like your favorite elopement that you've shot so far?
I think it might have been one that I just filmed this last month. I had a crazy stretch of 5 elopements in 10 days, stretched between Estes Crested Butte, Ridgeway. Then I was also in Telluride. Then I had a concert in Breckenridge and then back to Crested Butte. But the one that I got to do in Ridgeway was a 12 to 14 hour hiking elopement. We went up to Blue Lakes, which was just like the most mind-blowing place I've ever been. And the wildflowers were just completely unhinged while we were up there. Like it just kept getting better and better around every turn. And then we get up to the first lake. And I have never seen that density of wildflowers and that variety of wildflowers in one place. And it was just the most beautiful thing. And the couple was super fun. The photographer I was working with was an absolute blast. And it was just a total dream team all around.
I love that so much. I have a lot of FOMO right now because that's like one of my favorite places, but I've only seen it in like the fall. I've never seen it with the wildflowers. So yeah, Total FOMO, totally jealous right now. But let's talk about couples booking videographers for their elopements. It doesn't happen that often, you know? It's still kind of like a new thing. Like, obviously, Todd is my videographer husband, and only about half of our elopements book video. It's still very kind of hard to convince couples that they should have video, but why should they? I know you have very strong opinions about this. Why should all couples have a videographer on their elopement day?
Yeah, so everyone should have a videographer for a couple of reasons. One is that, yes, your photos are beautiful, but they don't capture the movement or the words. And I know some photographers are kind of trying to bridge that gap with GIF movies, and some of them are recording audio, some aren't, but it's still just not the same as having full motion.
Hmm.
It's one thing to see a photo of how your partner looks at you. It's another thing to see the video of how they check you out, look you up and down, and you can just see it turning in their mind like, "Oh my god, I am just the luckiest person in the world."
Yeah, it's all about the vows and stuff. Like the vows and the music and the emotions. Like I'll see photos and they're beautiful, but then I watch somebody's elopement video and I'm like sobbing. And sometimes I don't even know these people. It's just very emotional, these videos or films, I should say. I should call you a filmmaker.
I say both. Sometimes I'm, like, really hoity-toity and I call myself a cinematographer, so.
I still, in my mind, it's still videographer, but yeah, I got to start calling you guys filmmakers too. So let's say a couple books their photographer, which is normally like the first thing that couples that are eloping do. They book a photographer. How could photographers best serve their couples in recommending videography? Because that's really where a lot of the couples get the idea for videography is from the photographer.
Yeah, so I think that's actually something that needs to be brought up way before even booking in the photographer's process. Because one thing to keep in mind is that videography is not a cheap add-on. It's not just like, oh, for 500 bucks you can have a videographer for a 12-hour elopement. It costs the same if not more than photography. So I think if photographers can start setting that expectation early on instead of reserving, here's my vendor recommendations after booking. Put that in their mind when they inquire, when they're on the call with you. Have you considered a videographer? Have you budgeted for a videographer? I have 3 people that I love working with. Don't keep us a secret.
Hmm.
Yeah, like no one really just books videography. So they're not just going to bail from you and go book video. And I think that's what makes things most likely. And I know a lot of people, they bring on their husband or their partner to their business to shoot video, and that's wonderful. And you're able to provide a package deal. And I've started working with some photographers, and we do that package deal from the start. So when people inquire, they send their pricing guide, and I'm there on their pricing guide with them. Still my own business, still working for myself, but it's just a tandem deal that we offer because it helps both of us out. It helps the entire industry, and we want to see more people book video.
Yeah, I feel like more couples need to book video for sure. And I know that it is the biggest thing that couples regret after their elopement day is not doing video. Because I know the couples who've booked
Mhm.
me and Todd for just photography, they've often told us afterwards, like, oh man, we really should have sprung for the video. And so it's often regretted. And I think that we really need to make it more of just the norm that you book photo and video,
Mhm.
especially for elopements, because so many friends and family members aren't there. And you want to be able to show them this video afterwards. You want to be able to show them the photos and the videos to really help them like picture what the day was like. Or 30 years from now, let's say you don't want to share the video with grandma and stuff, and that's totally fine if it's just private for you. At least when you're older, you get to see it, you get to like relive that moment. And my parents have even told me that they wish they had a wedding video from their like 1981 wedding, because how cute would it be to look back and hear the vows and see the fashion and all that kind of stuff. So, what would you tell photographers who are like nervous about recommending videography to their couples?
Well, first off, I don't know why anyone would be nervous about recommending videographers. I know that there's a bunch of just like, and I hate that it's such a stereotype, but just weird dude videographers out there that don't talk, don't interact, or just like kind of creepy with a camera. And like every photographer knows at least and has worked with one of those. But not every
Mhm.
videographer is like that. So, first of all, really encourage photographers to connect with videographers that love their work. They want to potentially work with them. DM us, slide into our DMs. Like,
Mhm.
let's become friends. Let's go grab a
Mhm.
drink. Let's hop on a Zoom meeting if, we're not local and get to know each other that way. And then just having an open conversation about, okay, well, how do you like to work with couples? How do you like to pose? How do you set up your ceremonies? How do you interact with people the day of? Like, those are all important questions. And, when I was doing traditional weddings, I really made a huge point of that. Prior to every single wedding, I'd reach out to the photographer, get on the same page with them, and everything had gone smoothly. So I would keep hearing from photographers and videographers like, "Oh my gosh, like nothing went well on this wedding and me and the photographer and me and the videographer were butting heads." I'm like, "I've never experienced that because open and clear communication has always been a huge priority for me." I have also worked with so many photographers that after the fact they're like, "Oh my god, I'm so glad that you were there. Like it really broke up me feeling like I have to entertain my couple all day when it's just the two of us or the couple and myself." It just becomes a little bit easier mentally, and that you don't always have to be on, you don't always have to be the one posing or coming up with ideas. You have another person and another friend, hopefully they're friends, that you can have a little sounding board with and get ideas. And I feel like my creativity has improved since working with some photographers, and I've done things that other photographers have never thought of. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, like my photos are so much better when I work with a videographer." Also because videographers have to slow down so much more than photographers do.
Mhm.
We really focus on those transition moments, things that photographers might just skip over because they're more about the pose moments. But then when they work with a videographer, someone like me, or like I have friends that are the same way, that focus on those transition moments and really capturing the full story of the day, their photos improve as well. So it's cool to see how we each improve each other's creativity and our approach and our client's experience too.
That's such a good point, and I'm sure you just sold all the photographers on that because, yeah, like, it does take a lot of the stress off of them for being the one person doing the poses, being the MC, running the day. Now there's 2 of you to bounce ideas off of, 2 creative forces, and I know from my time working with you, because 'cause I've shot a few elopements with you when Todd wasn't available, and it was like that. It was like bouncing ideas back and forth, and the couples just thought the whole process was great, and it was true, like, it wasn't just me coming up with stuff and entertaining and all of that stuff, and it does create more of a storyteller feel to the day because you're not just posing, you are getting those moments of them, like, getting on and off a shuttle or going into a car or, like, yeah, just, like, the little snippets that as us photographers, like, it's not this epic, perfectly composed shot, so maybe I wouldn't have photographed that before, but now I am because I see how it tells the story of the day. So, yeah, all you photographers out there who are wondering how to go about with, like, improving your storytelling, work with a videographer. That's all they do is tell stories with their films. So, work with one and you'll see how they create it throughout the day. So, yeah. And you brought up another point that not all videographers are horrible to work with. And I think that's why some photographers are nervous about recommending a videographer because they might be weird or they might step on their toes or you might butt heads or something. But when you find a videographer you vibe with, it goes very smoothly, especially on elopement day when you're not fighting for aisle space and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you can find like 3 to 5 videographers that you absolutely adore working with and you wanna keep working with, like, refer the living daylights out of those people. Hype them up, share their films on your social media, show other couples that, you're stoked to be working with these people. like I've said before, it's just like having friends there on an elopement day. You know, if the two of you know each other really well, the couple knows each other, you each know the couple. It's so much fun.
Yeah, I will say some of my favorite elopements have been days where I know all the vendors and I love all the vendors, and it's like, hair and makeup artist is awesome, florist is awesome, videographer is awesome. Like when all of that comes together, like it just creates the best day. And one of the things I want to reiterate here is that we want you to refer videographers, and I'm talking to the elopement photographers out there. We want you to befriend and refer out videographers because this is really the best way to serve your couples. 30 years from now, they're going to be so thankful that they have that video. 2 weeks from now, they're going to be so thankful that they booked a videographer. You know, like they often regret it and they wish that they did it. So if we gave more information and more education and referrals around videography, we're just improving our client experience, our customer service, all of that stuff. We're just providing them with the best day ever. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I agree. You were actually asking me about hot takes that I have. And I think my hot take would be that photographers that don't refer videographers are doing a disservice to their couples. Or if you are actively telling your couples, oh, yeah, you don't need a videographer, you're doing your couples a disservice. That's my hot take.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I used to, honestly, I feel really bad about this. COVID totally changed my mind about video because so many people had, you know, family members that literally couldn't come to their weddings, and video became really important to them so that they could share with their family back home. And I used to be one of those people who really thought videography was redundant to photography. So why would they need it? And it was after COVID and stuff and seeing some of these beautiful films for these elopements that I was like, oh my God, my whole opinion on video and filmmaking and cinematography and all those things, it was just so wrong. And I did do a disservice to my couples for a long time. And now I'll always recommend video and really try to not convince, but just educate them more about why they really should have it. So cool. Well, any last hot takes you want to share with the listeners?
No, I did want to add something. We were talking earlier about, you know, people looking at their video 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, and your parents saying they wish that they had a video. Actually, one of my first wedding bookings, they booked me because their grandparents had video. It was just like no audio, just footage of them in the church. But that was such a special thing for them to be able to see as their grandkids that they were like, oh my God, like we have to have this for our wedding. And that's really stuck with me throughout the years as a videographer. Like, this is something that is going to be passed down for generations. It's not just, you know, to show on social media, it's for future loved ones and friends and family. And yeah, 2020 was a total pivot year where video did become really important because people couldn't be there to experience people's weddings. And it is so important for elopements too, because like you had said, you know, not all friends and family get to come. Grandparents might not be able to make it because of health issues. You know, I've had some other situations come up with filmmaking where, you know, I filmed their wedding and then 4 months later, they had a grandparent that couldn't come and they were like, you know, I'm so excited to be able to share this with the grandparent. And then, you know, unfortunately, grandparent passed away shortly after getting to see it, but they still got to experience being a
Mm-hmm.
part of the wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say too, about half my couples now, they're hosting receptions with their friends later and they want to show their films at the receptions, which is really cool. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's so important. And, you know, I always ask my couples too, I'm like, how do you want to feel about your film 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 50 years from now? And everyone is always just like, I want to be transported back to the day completely. And I don't think my photos are going to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
that's just always such a cool thing for me to give that to people and to give them their memories and give them,
That nostalgia
yeah, the
and
nostalgia.
transport them back to the day. But yeah, videos are just, they're very sentimental. And I don't think people really realize how amazing they are until they have them for themselves. And so I don't want anybody to miss out on having their elopement day videoed. And I agree with your hot take that any photographers out there who aren't actively promoting videography are doing a disservice because couples just don't know how amazing it could be.
Mhm.
They're like me, where they might think it's redundant to photography, and it's just not true. It's its own medium. It brings back its own memories. It documents the day completely differently than photography, and then photography and videography together are like just the perfect pair for documenting a day. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us on the podcast. Where can people find you on Instagram and stuff?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Embr Film Co. And then if you want to watch pet films, because who doesn't want to see a dog romping around in wildflower fields, I am Ruff and Roam as well. So
I love that. We're going to need to hire you for some documentation of our crazy animals.
I want to film your animals so bad.
They're all crazy. So
And you have a new
make
kitten.
for a very entertaining video. Oh yeah, the kitten's the best.
She's so sweet.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. It was so great talking, and see you next week. Thanks so much for joining us on this week's episode of Stoked. If you enjoyed the show and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, leave a review, and tell a friend. If you're looking for more inspiring elopement photography content, check us out on Instagram at Megan McPhail. And if you'd like to hear more about my business coaching and how I can personally help you hit six figures as an elopement photographer, then check out my website at www.meganmcphail.com.